transition and let's go to the Thursday night football matchup that took place in Las Vegas. It was a beatdown that took place in Las Vegas, Nevada last night, folks. The Las Vegas Raiders beat the L.A. Chargers 63-21. Yes, that score is correct. 63-21 for the Chargers. The quarterback stick, he went 23 of 32. He threw for 257 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. For the Raiders, Aiden O'Connell, he went 20 of 34. He threw for 248 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Devontae Adams, he had 8 receptions, 101 receiving yards, 1 touchdown for the Raiders. Here's former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley after the game.
That first half, it's the worst that you can play. And it was in all 3 phases. And, I take full responsibility.
Do you expect to be the coach here tomorrow?
I don't know that.
Do you think you should be?
Yes.
Why?
I know that what I've done here for 3 years, and I know what I put into this. And, I know that we're capable of going. I know the type of coach that I am. I believe in myself.
What could you have done differently in preparation to get these guys better prepared to play tonight?
Everything. I didn't do anything well enough to get us ready to play tonight.
And so if that's the case, then why should you be the coach? If that's
games like this happen in the NFL. To every coach that's ever coached in this league, you can look at any great coach that's ever coached in the league. Sometimes games like this happen.
So this is not like a normal occurrence.
No, tonight was not a normal occurrence. Right. Everything that could have gone wrong in all 3 phases went wrong.
That was Chargers head coach Brandon Staley. He's the former head coach now of the L.A. Chargers, as the L.A. Chargers have officially fired former head coach Brandon Staley. They also fired general manager Tom Telesco as well. So the L.A. Chargers have cleaned house. And first and foremost, my reaction to the Chargers firing Brandon Staley is, it's about damn time. I mean, I've been calling for the L.A. Chargers to fire Brandon Staley for the last 10 weeks. Like, I thought, honestly, Brandon Staley was lucky to keep his job after last year in the postseason. The L.A. Chargers lost a 27-point lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Jacksonville Jaguars were able to overcome a 27-point lead in a game in which Trevor Lawrence played one of his worst halves of football in his life. Not just in the NFL, in his life. And Trevor Lawrence and the Jacksonville Jaguars overcame a 27-point halftime deficit and beat the L.A. Chargers last year in the wild card playoff game. I said last year that if I'm the owner for the L.A. Chargers, I'm not allowing Brandon Staley back on the flight to L.A. I'm firing him immediately after the game, and I'm going and finding me a competent NFL head coach that can lead Justin Herbert and this talented L.A. Chargers football team. And then this year, you look at what Brandon Staley has done this year. This is the Chargers' defensive ranks. Now remember, Brandon Staley is a defensive head coach. This is his signature. This is his expertise. This is what he's supposed to be great at, okay? And I'm one of those people that I feel like if you are an offensive head coach, then the offensive side of the football should be the strength of the football team. You look at the Kansas City Chiefs. Besides this year, the strength of the Chiefs has always been the offensive side of the football. Andy Reid's their head coach. He's an offensive head coach. Okay? Matt LaFleur with the Green Bay Packers. Matt LaFleur is an offensive head coach. So the Packers offense has always been the strength of their football team. Mike McCarthy is an offensive head coach. The Cowboys offense, led by MVP candidate Dak Prescott, is the strength of their football team right now. Cowboys having scored less than, I think, 23 points since week 7. They're averaging like 32 points per game. So I'm a believer that as a head coach, whichever side of the football is your expertise, that side of the football should be the strength of the team. And even if it's not the strength of the team, it should not be the side of the football that's struggling the most. And Brandon Staley is known for defense, right? But let's look at his defensive statistics since he's been the head coach of the L.A Chargers. In 2021, the Chargers they were ranked 29th in points per game given up. They were ranked 23rd in yards per game given up. In 2022, they were ranked 21st in points per game given up. They were ranked 20th in yards per game given up. So they improved from what they were in 2021 going into 2022. Now let's transition to this year. The Chargers, they are ranked 27th in points per game given up. They also are ranked 29th in yards per game given up. This is the Chargers defensive ranks under Brandon Staley. So the Chargers defense has gotten worse over the last 3 years since he's been the head coach. They've gotten worse. And the crazy part in all of this is when you look at the L.A. Chargers defensively, they got talent. Okay? In the secondary, you got Derwin James. As pass rushers, you got Khalil Mack. Okay? You got Bosa as well. And at linebacker, you got Eric Kendricks, Kenneth Murray. They got talent on the defensive side of the ball. So why is the Chargers so bad defensively? They're horrible. They are awful as a defensive football team. Now, offensively, you got Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. I don't give a damn about what his record is. Justin Herbert is a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And Brandon Staley couldn't get it right with Justin Herbert? You look at Brandon Staley since he's been the head coach of the L.A. Chargers. He's 24-24, so he's 500. And he's been to the playoffs once in 3 years. That was in 2022 when they gave up that 27-point lead and lost to the Jacksonville Jaguars. So I've been calling for Brandon Staley's job for the last 10 weeks. But even after they lost that 27-point lead to the Jacksonville Jaguars, I've said maybe it's a coaching issue with the Chargers. People want to keep blaming Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert was never the problem with the Chargers. Never. It's always been Brandon Staley. And I'm going to say something on the show that I know as a sports analyst and being a sports fan in my 32 years of living, I know this happened last night. Last night, during the Thursday night matchup, when the Chargers played against the Las Vegas Raiders, the Chargers as a team quit. They quit on Brandon Staley last night. That's what happened. They flat out quit. You can tell that the players, they no longer are listening to Brandon Staley, and they don't believe in the message that he's trying to preach in that locker room. So it was about damn time for the Chargers to fire Brandon Staley. About damn time. Those are my 3 words that I think about as I react to the Chargers finally firing Brandon Staley. Now, I believe the Chargers, they have never had a history of firing coaches during the season. They always wait until after the season to dismiss head coaches. But I felt like there needed to be an exception in this situation involving Brandon Staley. It was time for Brandon Staley to go. Now, they fired their general manager as well, but I actually like the talent on this Chargers football team. Offensively, you got Justin Herbert, a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. You got to make a decision on what you're going to do with Austin Eckler, but I still think when he's at his best, Austin Eckler is a top 10 running back in the NFL. At receiver, you got a true number one in Keenan Allen. You're going to get back Mike Williams next year. And you also have Joshua Palmer in that receiver room, Jalen Guyton. And then at tight end, you got Gerald Everett. And I like their left tackle as well, Rashad Slater. So this job for the L.A. Chargers is a job that I think would be a great head coaching opportunity for a future candidate. I really do. I like this opportunity for candidates that's going to try and interview for this coaching job in L.A. I really do. You got Justin Herbert. You're in L.A., palm trees. So I think when you look at potential jobs that are going to be available once the season is over, I think the L.A. Chargers is at the top of that list for sure. As for a head coach, for a potential head coach, this is the perfect job opportunity. You got a quarterback who's a franchise quarterback. You have talent around Herbert. And again, defensively, you got Khalil Mack. You got Joey Bosa as your pass rushers. You got Eric Kendricks at linebacker. In your secondary, you got Derwin James as well. And you're in L.A. with palm trees. L.A., palm trees, Justin Herbert. It doesn't get much better than that. Because usually when these head coaching opportunities are available, usually you don't have a quarterback the caliber of a Justin Herbert. You don't. You just don't. And I'm looking at some of these numbers from last night's game in the Chargers-Raiders matchup. The 63 points that the Raiders scored is the second most in a game after being shut out. That was what was telling for me. The Las Vegas Raiders didn't score a single point last week against the Minnesota Vikings. They didn't score a single point literally 3 days earlier than when they played the Chargers and they stepped on the field last night and put up 63 points. 63 points? Are you kidding me? And you look at the halftime lead. The Raiders were beating the Chargers 42-0. It is one of the 4 largest halftime leads in NFL history. This includes the playoffs. The only bigger halftime lead was in 2009. Patriots were leading over the Titans by 45 points. But this is one of the largest halftime leads in NFL history. And it was clear that it was time for the Chargers to move on from Brandon Staley. It was clear. But I think this job is a nice opportunity for a future candidate out there. And I think the Chargers, if they can get the right coach into that system and they can pair him or her with Justin Herbert, I believe the Chargers will be set up for success. I really, really do. It's a quarterback-driven league. It's an offensive league. You already have a franchise quarterback. Usually, these job openings, you have to go out and draft a franchise quarterback. You already got a franchise quarterback in Justin Herbert. So I think that the Chargers, maybe they should try and target Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh loves Justin Herbert. And I know Jim Harbaugh wants to get back into the NFL. When he was the head coach for the San Francisco 49ers, he led the 49ers to a Super Bowl appearance. Jim Harbaugh paired up with Justin Herbert, that would be problems for other teams in the AFC. It would be for sure problems because this is a top-tier head coach and a top 10 quarterback being paired together. So keep an eye out on the Chargers trying to interview Jim Harbaugh and get him away from Michigan. Bill Belichick. What if the Patriots move on from Bill Belichick and Bill Belichick wants to go and coach Justin Herbert? So these are 2 candidates that I'm looking at for the Chargers that are potential candidates that they could go and look for to replace Brandon Staley. But as for the Raiders, the Raiders are 6-8. I don't think the Raiders are a playoff team in the AFC. I'm not going to all of a sudden feel like the Raiders are this playoff team because they blew out the Chargers, whose season was already pretty much over. I'm not going to I'm looking at the Raiders' schedule. Week 16, they are in Kansas City against the Chiefs. That's a loss. Week 17, they're in Indy going up against Gardner Minshew and the Colts. That's a potential loss. And then week 18, they finish up at home against the Broncos. That's a potential loss as well. But I just don't think the Raiders are on the level of these other teams that's trying to get into the playoffs in the AFC. I would probably take the Bills over the Raiders. I would probably take the Colts over the Raiders. The way Jake Browning is currently playing, I'm probably taking the Bengals over the Raiders. So I just think the Raiders, that they've kind of fallen a little far too back to make the playoffs. But I do think they should keep Antonio Pierce as their head coach. These players want Antonio Pierce to coach them, and they like the job that he's done since he's been their head coach. So I think Mark Davis should definitely seriously consider keeping Antonio Pierce. But great for the L.A. Chargers to finally fire Brandon Staley. Now maybe they can bring a coach in there that can help Justin Herbert succeed and start making noise in the AFC.